Hello chaps, welcome to John Robson Guitar Tuition once again. As always, I do hope you're well. Bit of a different video today to the norm. I don't normally talk about politics on this channel. I would much rather keep the content centered around matters guitar and music related. But occasionally the worlds do overlap, as is the case recently when I did a video of the Harley Benton SC400. Basically a £100 Les Paul copy available from Thomann. Someone left a comment below that video saying that anyone who buys a guitar like that is complicit in exploitation, child labour, modern slavery, etc, etc, etc. And I just thought it was my right of reply to put some kind of rebuttal out there. Frankly, as well, I left college 30 years ago, this year in fact, and being that it's a long time since I was at college, I really don't feel obliged to pay much attention, if any, to lectures these days, especially when the person delivering the lecture has such a tenuous and loose grip on reality. Harley Benton guitars are cheap guitars, or good value guitars, whichever you want to call it. Part of the reason for this is that they essentially come straight from the factory. It's like buying something from a factory outlet store. Okay, it's not going through the hands of a distributor, an importer, a wholesaler, etc. You've got at one end of the supply chain you've got factory, at the other end of the supply chain you've got retailer, and all of the middlemen in between have been cut out. So you're not paying their profit margins. That's one reason these guitars are so cheap. Another reason is, yes, they are built in an economy with lower wages than developed Western nations. That is not the same thing as having guitars built by slave labour and, you know, making a fast buck out of exploitation. Different economies around the world have different levels of income. This is the reason why many British workers in the 70s and 80s and 90s for that matter would go out and work in places like Dubai and Saudi Arabia, because the average level of income in those countries was higher than the average level of income in the UK, meaning that it made economic sense for people to travel to those countries to earn money to send home. We've got exactly the same situation in the UK at the moment. The average wage in the UK is much higher than the average wage in Romania, for example, meaning that it makes economic sense for people from Eastern Europe to come to the UK, earn money, more than they could earn at home, send money home, and, you know, it makes sense for them to do that. So some countries have higher levels of income than other countries, and it is not a given that if you live and work in a lower wage economy that you are de facto a victim of slavery, exploitation and sweatshop conditions. Clearly it is ridiculous to suggest that. What matters is quality of life. Can you afford a decent quality of life on the earnings that you're being paid? It doesn't matter if those earnings are half or a third of what they would be in another country, because in that other country the cost of living would be higher. Now, I'm not saying that bad working conditions and exploitation doesn't exist. Of course it does. But you shouldn't equate buying a product that was made in a lower wage economy with being a supporter of bad working sweatshop conditions, slavery, exploitation and all the rest of it, because it simply does not follow. Personally, my view is that you do not improve living standards in a low wage economy by boycotting products that are made there, because that simply creates unemployment in those economies, more hardship, deprivation and poverty. How is that improving the lot of the people who work in these economies? I also believe that because we have a democratically elected government in this country, you know, whichever side of the political spectrum happens to be in power, they are there because people have gone to a ballot box and cast a vote. Now, the government sets rules, standards, laws, if you like, about which countries around the world it's okay to do business with and which countries it isn't. And a large part of this decision-making process comes down to ethics, human rights, etc. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect system, it clearly isn't. We still have to do business with some rather unsavoury regimes around the world. And the reason we have to do that is because the first duty of any government in the UK, or in any other country for that matter, is to look after the people in that country, the people who pay the taxes to fund the infrastructure and the nation's existence, basically. So sometimes we do have to hold our noses and say, you know what, we'd rather not do business with this chap, but our economy would suffer and it would create hardship in the UK if we were to turn our noses up at him. So that's why we live in a system where, yes, sometimes we do have to do business with people who'd rather not, but we live in the real world, not the perfect world. And on a final note, I just wonder where the person who typed this accusation that I'm essentially funding modern slavery, child exploitation and sweatshop conditions, where was this person's PC built? Where was their smartphone built? Where was their tablet built? Where was their television built? Etc, etc. If you're going to start flinging accusations around like that, then perhaps you should put your own house in order first. And with that, I wish you all a good day and see you next time, where it's back to the normal run of stuff. I'm basically going to be doing a video to see if you can gig for less than £500 without exploiting anyone, of course. See you next time, folks.